Hello and welcome to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast.
I've got my good friends here, Bill Brooks, and he almost doesn't need an introduction. We were teaching an NEC class yesterday. He's been in the solar industry longer than he's been alive, if you can believe that. and then Johan, he is the Johan. He does have a last name, but he's just saying he's kind of like Ronaldo. Everybody goes, you know, Johan, and Johan is sitting right next to me too.
There's only one Johan that I know of.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Unless you're in South Africa.
yeah.
Yeah,
or
if there's
Denmark.
another one, we're going to change his name, man. And Johan and I go way back too. We started off working with the Wentworth family, and that was quick mount. And so Johan's expert at racking and all this kind of stuff. And so what our topic is today is we're going to talk about things that are fun, and we're going to talk about the future, some soothsaying. So Bill's really good about soothsaying. Johan's really good about fun. And so we're going to probably switch back and forth and talk about things that are fun in the future and get a little bit crazy and stuff. But just when we were...
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So just when we were getting started, before we were talking, Bill was mentioning that he was at the first one of these. And so we're also going to get historical on you right now.
When is the first one?
Because Bill's going to tell us.
I would consider the first one of these happened in, was called Utility Photovoltaic Group, and it was in Chandler, Arizona in 1994.
Wow.
And then SIA had a conference going on at the same time, and they were parallel. And so at some point...
Gather around, kids. Grandpa's got stories.
Right. Grandpa's got stories. So both of them kind of, they merged, and then they kind of went down the tubes, and Julia Ham is the one that really kind of resurrected all that. And the thing you see today is kind of her resurrecting of all that and creating this, and it just grew and grew and grew. And, you know, along with the solar coaster, it's been up and down. You know, we've had some years that were 3,000 or 4,000 and some that have been, you know, like this. So,
Yeah.
You know how, like, when everybody was kind of upset when they switched from SPI to RE+, so what was it at first?
So there was the SIA conference and the UPVG conference, and like I said, those things.
So it's the
UPVG was Utility Photovoltaic Group, and
UPVG.
And then SEPA came out of that.
Okay.
So Solar Electric Power Authority came out of that, and that was a utility. That was kind of the rebirth of UPVG. They rebranded it, and then SIA kind of joined that, and it went forward. So
I'm going to start calling it UPVG, like an old school guy.
that's really old. That's really old. So but
Welcome
that goes
to the
way back to the
UPVG
mid-'90s.
conference. Yeah.
So it's been around a long time. Back then, it was just utility people out at that conference, and there was like 10 of us that were not utility people that we snuck in on it.
So no cool parties.
The parties were really cool.
Really?
Yeah. So it was a very small group of people. So
Nice. Any shirts that linger around from that?
boy, I don't know that I have any from way back
Yeah.
then. So.
I remember one conference, they did a cool thing where they brought out old vintage shirts from all the solar conferences.
Nice.
And I guess you could say I'm semi-dating myself a little bit, but I've got some from the early 2000s.
I've got hats from way back, and I like to I wear my Wiley hat now because they're,
He's got a Solyndra shirt he always wears.
Yeah, Solyndra is awesome.
Yeah. They're going to come back. It's going to be the corporate Messiah resurrection.
Something.
Yeah. That's what I'm going for when the AI takes over,
So I don't know, we don't have like a full dedicated audience, but it'd be pretty interesting to know what our crowd is like. Like, how many people have been in the industry for more than 5 years? Right? Like, make noise.
That's right.
10 years?
10 years. Yeah.
20 years?
Woo!
That's dwindling now. Bill, how many years?
36.
Oof.
Any
Grandpa's
36?
got stories. That's fun. There's good stories, I'm sure.
No, it is. And they were talking about, what do you come here for? And it's cool to see all the people because I don't know anybody, And but when we started, everybody knew everybody. And then when you run into people that were around 35 years ago, it's super cool because you can look at them and just go, it's cool.
I mean, not to take away from anybody who's getting in the industry. I mean, if you're new to it, Sean said, I like to talk about the fun parts, but
Yeah.
I mean, I got in this industry I was an environmental student in college, and I was studying all kinds of different stuff, including biology, and renewables. And then I just got into solar. And the reason why I stay in it really is the people, and the people are really cool. And there still are a lot of people who've been in it for a long time, or people get in it for the first time. And I really love it's like we all are. It doesn't matter what political party you're on, in the sense, we got the debate coming up. It doesn't matter. I'm friends with guys who are super, super on one side, and I grew up in Berkeley, California, and we have fun together. We talk about the same things. We are in the industry together. We see it rise and fall. You talk about the solar coaster. We're on this shit together.
Yeah.
So we got to do it together. So it's fun to see each other.
It's always been one of the areas in government and politics that there's been a lot of bipartisan support historically. Right. It really has. And so it's kind of frustrating when it gets political, because it's like it doesn't have to, because there's been a lot of history there. There's good people on both sides of the aisle that are really strongly in support of it. And the problem is that when one side or the other takes it on as a political thing, then the other side goes, well, I guess we should oppose that because, we don't want to look like we're agreeing with those guys. And so that's where it's frustrating to me, of being in it for so long. It's like, it doesn't need to be political. It doesn't. There's benefits to it. We don't need to oversell it. And that's, I consider myself a technology ambassador, really. And, this technology captured my attention, a really long time ago. And I was in, it's just like, okay, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And so, where do I start? He's like, well, there isn't any industry right now. So I guess we start at the ground level. We start digging the foundation. Okay, let's do that. So I dig the foundation for a while, and then, okay, let's put some stuff on it, and let's go from there. And so, the good news is if you do the right things consistently, not caring about yourself or, whatever, good things happen. But it takes a lot of persistence. It takes a lot of grit. It takes a lot of, pioneering. The whole pioneering aspect of this industry has been, I guess I'm just kind of built that way. And it's like when the first utility company that told me I couldn't do solar, crossed me, I was like, oh, we're on now. Yeah. Let's do this thing. And so, now I have a lot of utility friends for sure, and I have clients that are utility companies, but it's about, this technology is not, the old pioneer stuff was, well, a bunch of hippie guys in Northern California. It's like, no, this is like for everybody.
Yeah, so let's kind of get back to our topic. So making solar fun and talking about the future.
That's not fun?
Politics is not fun.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, and the debate is starting right now, and we are changing the outcome of the election with all these people here not watching the debate. So
we're taking over a tremendous amount of the airtime.
Just write my name in. Forget about all those other people. And so let's see. Let's ask Johan about all the different things he's done to make this industry more fun. You got the solar battle of the bands, and go for it, Johan.
Well, I don't like talking about myself, but
okay. I'll talk him up a little bit more then. The solar battle of the bands. I was actually at the first one that wasn't even called the solar battle of the bands, because it was just Johan's band playing at the Utah over in San Francisco, and then the next year I think it was, he started this thing called the Battle of the Bands, and then there's all these bands, and one of them was even named after Rapid Shutdown, which is a term that Bill coined, and it was, it was just a lot of fun. And it's coming back, right? It's going to be in San Diego?
So Solar Battle of Bands, I don't remember what the first one was. I think it was 2011, and it was in San Francisco. And similar to your story about that conference that was small, the Intersolar Conference back in the day was just in San Francisco, and it was a semiconductor conference, and it was small. And there's this tiny little solar section, and we had just started I was with Quick Mount. I helped the Wentworths get that company started. I was just a dirt under the fingernails solar installer, didn't know what the hell I was doing. They took me on, and then they showed me their product. I thought it was cool. Long story short, I just wanted to have a booth there, and we had a little table. I wheeled it in myself with my truck and just I think it was probably illegal in terms of unions and all that, but I just rolled that thing in and just did it. And we did a booth, and it's this tiny section, and there was probably no bigger than this room of solar exhibitors, and there was no party. Yeah. And so I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area, and I basically was like, well, I'm going to have my band play. And I just booked my band at the Hotel Utah in San Francisco. Still exists, actually. They reopened it. Old San Francisco venue. Like Robin Williams came out of there. Awesome spot. Dirt dive bar. Total dive bar. Anyways, long story short, the reason why I think this industry is so cool and is because there's so many cool people. And I had my band play there, and I just invited people and said, hey, we're playing down here. It's just a spot. For some reason, everyone thinks I know where to go, where the solar party is. And so I just learned quickly, you just pick a spot and say there. Yeah. And then everybody goes there. And then we just want to hang out. Who cares where we are? And so we ended up at the Hotel Utah, and that place just blew up. Solar people took over, and it was really fun. And then, long story short, somebody with another solar, my company or my band, they were, we were dirtbags. I got them jobs at the solar industry, just to be real. And they still work in the solar industry. Oh, cool. And anyway, so people started calling us a solar band. And I'm like, we're not a solar band. We're just guys who work in the solar industry, and we play music, whatever. And other people started coming forward. And back in the day, Solar City had a band. Sungevity had a band. Zep Solar had a band. Yep. A couple formed. Innovatus is very creative. Fronius back in the day formed a band. SMA formed a band. A bunch of people started forming bands, and we did a battle of the bands. And it turned out to be one of the most badass parties. I mean, Solar Fight Night's a great party, but it was rock and roll. And we did it for almost 10 years, and it was just so cool to see. Look up, and you see people just rocking. And I vetted them out. They were good musicians, every single one of them. And you look up, and you're like, oh, there's the president of SunPower or whatever, or something, just ripping on guitar, and you didn't know he could play. It's pretty cool. So I would say this industry is pretty fun, and there's a lot of people who are very talented, not just in their career, but in other things that they're interested in. I love riding motorcycles, and I learn every day at these conferences of other people who ride, and it's cool. It starts another conversation, and we are bringing back Solar Battle of the Bands to San Diego in February. At the Intersolar Conference, and I'd love to do it here, but it's just so big and intimidating, to be honest. But
I think next year I'm going to book the Spear for it.
Yeah, let's do it. Rock and roll.
And so, how do people get their band involved?
It's new, but we are putting out applications. So if anyone in this vicinity or listening is a musician and works in the solar industry, now's the time to put your music instrument.
Take guitar lessons.
There you go. So start, hit me up and hit up CALSA. CALSA it's all a fundraiser for CALSA to fight for, our industry in California and beyond. So it's pretty cool. And so if solar musicians, we're just getting them together, and applications are being accepted until November-ish. And then we're going to start picking the bands. And I have no idea. All those bands that were in it before are disbanded. Some of them are coming back together. We'll see what happens.
Reunion bands.
Cool.
How about that?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then you've also did this thing called the Comedy Slam, and you do this other thing called the Solar Game. So thanks for making solar fun, Johan.
Yeah. I got to give my sister credit. She works in the industry.
Yeah.
You know my sister.
Oh, yeah.
She's actually the real engineer in the family. I just pretend like I'm smart. And she started the Comedy Slam, and that was cool. That was a one-time thing. And then Solar Games is fun, too.
All right.
Good stuff.
And so the other topic we're going to cover is soothsaying, understanding the future, and I think Bill's pretty good at that. And so yesterday he was finishing off the class talking about combining together things like electric vehicles, energy storage systems, and things like that. So maybe you can let all of these people here and all the people that will be listening to this immortally 100 years from now, historians are going to be listening to us because this is digital.
Internet's forever.
Yeah, internet's forever. So.
Yeah. Well, you don't want to call yourself a prophet because back in the day they'd stone them if it didn't happen. So it's like we'll just say yes, soothsayer may work okay. But,
well, you just say in 100 years. And then what are they going to do? Stone you after you're
exactly.
gone?
One of the things I like to say is that there are 4 technologies that are going to be linked together for the foreseeable future. certainly in the residential space, but also in the commercial and utility space as well.
The four technologies.
Yeah, four technologies that are going to be linked together. And of course, PV is the one we care about the most because that's what actually makes the power. You know, you gotta have a power source, and so PV is the starting point. But along with PV, obviously, stationary energy storage has become required in California and a lot of other places, and in places where they don't allow utility interconnection. I mean, now storage is in a position where you can pair solar and storage together, and it's like if the utility says we don't want you to interconnect, then you say we won't. Then screw you. I mean, sorry.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is bidirectional electric vehicles. So in order to do this effectively,
Like reverse, right?
cost effectively, yeah. Well, you need transportation, but you also need to be able to utilize the large battery. See, you can't afford a big enough stationary battery to be practical for things like backup power and stuff like that. And so the idea that you're going to sell to your average customer in the United States a 30 or 40 kilowatt hour battery is just insanity. It's just not going to happen. And I don't care what number you get, energy storage down to, it's just not going to happen. And that's part of my soothsaying, but that's 37 years of experience. And so, a small stationary battery that's able to deal with the excess energy coming from the array that you can use at night and things like that. And of course, there's a lot of models now that are helping us understand what that ratio looks like in different places of the country. It changes. But then if you really need a lot of energy storage, you're going to get that from your electric vehicle. But all three of these things don't matter if you don't have good load controls. Because when you get into backup power, the problem is people want to do whole home backup and stuff like that. And unless you're going to separate out your loads in the house, which a lot of people don't want to do, you have to have good load control. And the more that you integrate those four technologies together, in a consistent package that can talk to each other, that know what's going on, you have to have a central command center in that. The better companies do in those four technologies, the better the cost effectiveness is going to be. The greater ability to put this anywhere in the United States, not just in California and Hawaii. And so, I think the future is, maybe we're going to treat the utility as a backup generator. So we're going to produce most of our own electricity. We're going to buy a little bit from the utility when it's worth it to us, when it's not super expensive. And then we're going to have our own power system, so that if somebody wants to get crazy and do something stupid to our power system, we're like, okay, we're good.
So it's almost like going full circle, because before solar was all off grid and it was the hippies in the woods.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like it's going to go back to this in a different way, obviously, more futuristic, self-reliant type systems.
When you start introducing generation and storage at the small level, distributed level of any kind you want to talk about, it's a fundamental game changer. And so we still have a utility industry that is thinking of utility as power as centralized in transmission distribution. And we really have to get to the point where we realize we do have a decent infrastructure. It's very difficult to improve that infrastructure. It's very expensive to increase that infrastructure. And if we're going to have a lot more electric vehicles and we're going to do this transportation thing, doubling the infrastructure of our electric utilities is going to make electricity costs too expensive. And so nobody's going to be able to afford electricity, so that doesn't make any sense. So how do we do it so that, a lot of the stuff that I write says, hey, I can take 100 amp service on a house and I can put in 2 electric vehicle chargers, I can run heat pumps, I can do all these things if I have control over it and I know what's going on. And I can take the power that I get from that 100 amp service. In fact, you look at the numbers, you could probably do it with 30 or 40 amps from the utility with energy storage, and I can live like a king or queen, and I don't need 400 amp service. I don't need all these other things, but I'm effectively using the infrastructure that I have to its full extent, and I'm not taxing that infrastructure. And, you know, the problem is the utility company says, well, we make money by building infrastructure. We're a construction company at heart. And we make a lot of money on that. So that's why we want to encourage everybody to go down this road. And it's like, no. We want to do this efficiently and effectively. Because if we overbuild the system, then we're going to make less reason for people to have solar and less reason to have storage. And so now you're creating inefficiencies into your power system that are fundamentally going to create waste rather than, you know, doing things efficiently and smart.
So that's pretty cool. So I'm going to have utility backup. So we're changing the definition of utility backup. Utility's the backup, man.
Absolutely. Utility's the backup.
We interrupt you for a very important announcement. Shaun White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast has been brought to you by Shaun White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. That's right, Shaun White is sponsoring his own podcast, and he wants to remind you to go check out some of his classes. You can go to SolarSean, that's solar, SEAN.com, and then click on the links to check out his classes. You can check out his heat spring classes, and you can also hire him to teach classes for you, like at your company, something like that. Now back to the show.
They are not the primary source.
Yeah. And so then I was thinking of some other things too to like make solar fun and in the future. And so some of the crazy things that I was thinking of that you guys will probably think I'm totally crazy, but if you really think about exponential growth and logarithmic growth and all that kind of stuff, I mean, it's crazy to imagine where we're going to be, computing power, the growth of the solar industry, how long, if the solar industry keeps growing like this, how long until the Earth is a giant solar ball, or all of our solar is going to be in space, and we're going to have some kind of Dyson sphere or something like that. There's all these kind of future technologies. So I don't
think that's going to happen. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, wait.
Let him have his fun.
I'll bet you 200 years.
Yeah.
Come on. And so I thought of some other stuff too. So one of them is like we're going to genetically modify seagulls to poop butyl rubber to seal up the penetrations. What do you think, Johan?
Nice.
Is that?
Sounds like a bunch of bullshit.
That's right. Bird shit.
I mean, like genetics. That's a technology that's really taking off and stuff. The one thing that you worry about with technology though is like, is it going to need us humans, or we're going to like maybe we will live 200 years?
Here's the problem. Our technology runs on electricity, and our electricity system is unbelievably vulnerable to natural disaster and terrorist attack. Unbelievable. And you can't even imagine how easy it is to take down our system right now. And so, so the whole point in moving forward,
you know, if you keep going, the guys in the black jackets are going to tackle you.
They are going to tap us.
Yeah.
But that's why you have to have a system that is resilient, and that's where distributed energy makes sense and distributed storage makes sense, because if you fundamentally take away the strategic advantage of damaging the electrical system, then it's no longer a target. So right now it's a huge target, and they can, you know, bad players can economically affect around the world in a major way. And so, and I know it sounds like black helicopters and crap like that, but it's just absolutely true.
You're going to see one.
And so the point is, how do you make communities, how do you make homes, how do you make businesses, you know, resilient enough that they're just impervious to that? And it's like, I don't care what happens. You know, we have become so technologically dependent upon our communications and our internet and the things like that. We just cannot afford to have these things break down. It will literally at this point where our dependency is, it would create chaos. And that's not a great situation to be in. And we have a solution. We have the ability to play a reasonable part in that. I'm not saying we're going to solve all the problems. I'm just saying that we can play a significant role, and that's the way businesses are going to have to approach the world. It's just we live in a different world now, and it's partly because we have chosen to become this dependent upon electricity. I mean, just turn the lights off for a while and find out what happens. It's you go around the country where they've had major outages, and it's like Stone Age in a day. I mean, these people just don't know how to survive because they don't realize how much they've come to, they don't understand how much they've relied on this technology that's all around them, and it's very reliable right now. But we also live in a very benign environment right now.
Remember Texas? It was like 2 years ago,
yeah,
I think.
No, that
outages.
was a shit show.
That was crazy.
It was crazy, and a lot of people got solar and storage after that, right? Puerto Rico, right? What happened there? So these are people that have learned from history, from example, that fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, right? I can do something. I'm an American. I have some. Yeah, I have some ability to address the issue, and so why not do it? You may not be backing up your whole home or whatever, but you can keep things going well.
So what does a prepper's house look like in 2025?
Mine.
Yeah, what do you got going on?
I got about 35 kilowatts of PV and maybe 50 kilowatts of hours of storage. I don't know, something like that. Do you have 3 electric vehicles? What do you want?
Do you have a secret bunker you can't tell us about?
That's right. Mm-hmm. I have an electric bike, too. And I have a motorcycle, 2 of them.
And he even knows how to pedal a bike, too.
That's right.
That's like really hardcore.
That's right.
Electric motorcycle or gas?
They're both gas. Yeah, I'm looking at changing. I've got a couple non-running bikes that I'm thinking about, doing a little electric upgrade on.
The electric motorcycles are coming in. I've noticed. This is me selfish talking about motorcycles, but
we've got a sailboat together. But I've got a catamaran, and I want to turn that into an electric catamaran. Forget the mast and the sail. I'm just gonna put a big old battery on that sucker and just take it out to the lake.
Batteries out on water.
That's right.
Sounds awesome.
It's awesome. What the heck? What could possibly go wrong?
So then another future technology I was kind of thinking of that's kind of fun and crazy is to have how far in the future until we have micro drones that you can't even see that use like sort of the technology from 3D printing to build your house and spit out 40% efficient silicon crystals on top of it.
This is the Beavis and Butthead section of the solar talk. People coming out of there are like, what are these guys talking about?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Before I started in solar, and it was I guess I was just getting started, National Association of Home Builders in the mid 1980s had the smart house, and they said, you know what? In a couple of years, everybody's going to have a smart house, and it's going to be like you just turn your lights on, you do and that technology is just today getting to the point of where they were talking about it in 1985, and so the point being that it's great to have a vision for the future, and it's great to say, well, all this thing could happen and all that, but the reality is we have the real world. And the real world slows everything way down. And of course, even though the National Association of Home Builders had smart houses, they were slowing everything down because they were like, oh, about all that. And so the market has to be there. There has to be an incentive to do it as far as it's got to make sense. And that's why the practicality of, like I said, the sizing of PV arrays with stationary storage and bidirectional vehicles and load control, all those things have to make sense. You're not going to sell your average customer on having the ability to control everything in their house right out of the gate. There's got to be a reason to do that. Why would I need that? Well, you'd need that if you had your own backup system where you could run pretty much everything in your house you needed to. There's some things you might not be able to do at certain times, but because of all these other issues that are coming down the road, and because I really want to have reliable electricity, maybe grandma's in the house and she needs oxygen or whatever, I'm going to put in this stuff, and now I can justify having all this stuff that's really cool, but it costs a fair amount of money. I got to financially justify it.
Sean, you think aliens got solar?
I think that like aliens and solar, now that you mention it, if you look at the invention of the solar cell and the Roswell incident, It's very close together. Roswell, right before 1954, the solar
And Velcro was around the same time. Yeah.
Those guys were smart. And
Sometimes I think this theory, are we the hillbillies of the universe and aliens don't come here on purpose? Because they just crash here, right?
That's true.
Did they come? Are we intelligent beings? I think we're pretty
maybe
smart,
not.
but sometimes I'm like, well, that was dumb.
Yeah.
it's a big universe.
There is no intelligent life on Earth right now, from what I'm looking at.
Yeah. And so speaking of stupidity, I have this idea.
That is
Tell us, Sean.
Solar Battle of the Bands. We're going to bring in the 9540A large-scale fire testing for lithium battery people. And we're going to do pyrotechnics for Solar Battle of the Bands at the same time that we're testing batteries for thermal runaway.
We could test it in the background. It'd be like the backdrop to the band. We could be like doing a fire test while they're doing
Well, that's awesome.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
It'd be
My
like
sister blows up batteries.
Yeah, it's like,
I should
have
ask
fire shooting at the top of them.
none of
would
this
be
fake
sweet.
smoke stuff. That's like for
Do some arcing.
That'd be sweet.
Yeah.
Well, how about some Tesla balls in the back?
Oh yeah. So Tesla coils and
Tesla
stuff. Yeah.
coils, that'd be
big
awesome.
old huge sparks, and then that could be like carrying. Like, why do we even have conductors? Like, why don't we just put all the PV in the world together in series?
He was working on it.
and it would just go right through the air. We wouldn't need any stupid conductors.
If he hadn't gone crazy, he might have solved that one.
Copper. It's like
Tesla's working on it. He was definitely working on it.
Like, did you know if you had a megavolt that you can transport a megawatt with a speaker cable, with like something as small as your phone charger, 1 amp, megawatt, megavolt, 1 amp.
What about that high pulse technology that they got now? It's power over Ethernet, and it's pulsing power over Ethernet, and it's pretty interesting stuff.
Like on your Ethernet cable, it's like how many?
It's a high voltage pulse they're putting on the Ethernet and on the Ethernet cable, and
How high is the voltage? Do you know?
I don't know, but
Is it a megavolt? That's my favorite number.
no.
It's crazy, though. I mean, if you really think about it, think about in the 90s, the concept of this. A computer in your pocket, This is wild. Like, back then, nobody thought that was going to happen. I mean, BlackBerries were a new thing, and that was cool. Where are we going to be in 30 years, 20, I don't know, 50 years from now, 100 years from now? Are they going to be laughing at us at the solar thing, or were we geniuses?
I mean, the reality is we have a real world that we have to deal with. So that's why I brought up the point of the smart house in the 80s. There has to be a good economic and market case for whatever we do, whatever happens moving forward. When the first smartphone came out, it was just like, here's something really cool. We think people are going to actually do something with it. And they gave you a few apps to kind of start people on the idea. And, the iPad came out, same kind of idea. It's like, this thing is pretty worthless until people figured out, okay, well, here's what we can do. And so it takes time, and you got to build that case. And that's the way I see it with all these things, is that, any one of these technologies could become a real game changer. But it's going to be that the companies that are able to integrate it effectively, and that's really what you're looking at with an iPhone is an integration. It's an integration of a whole bunch of technologies. And then you come out with a new sensor that goes into it. What are people going to do with that new sensor? And you're like, the people that invented the sensor really didn't. They had a couple ideas, but when the real ideas come out, they're like, well, we never even envisioned that at all.
Right.
So that's where the creativity comes in, because people are thinking about, well, how can I monetize this? How can I do something that's interesting to people and that they want? And that can help them do their job better,
I mean, coming from the racking world, I've always worked in racking, and it's like the solar roof thing was a cool idea. But as soon as I mean, BIPV in our industry, we've always said, like, good luck, boys. It's not going to work. And still, it's not really working.
Do you think it will work, like, in how long? Like a million years?
It's the idea of the future, and it always will be.
The solar roof.
Yeah.
So, I agree.
So, I started my career in this field in 1988. And in 1978, there were 10 different manufacturers of building integrated PV. In 1978. okay? Little companies like General Electric, you ever heard of them? And they were building this stuff, and they were trying it out and testing it. And everybody, in 1978, if you were to tell any one of those companies or anybody that had anything to do with solar that we were in 2024 going to be installing frame modules on a residential rooftop, they would have laughed in your face and said, there's absolutely no way that's even possible. And so here we are in 2024 putting frame modules on rooftops, and guess what? It still makes sense. That's the only reason we're doing it, not because we're Luddites or anything like that. It's because it makes sense.
It works.
And it works. And the attempts at building integrated PV have been mixed.
Yeah.
Not saying they're all bad. I think that some of them have been pretty good. And some of the technologies that went away in the mid-2000s, when Schwarzenegger came to office in California, he said that every new home was going to have solar. That's back in 2004. And National Association of Home Builders sat him down and said, no, they're not. and so it didn't happen. But all these companies lined up and built some products, and some of those were pretty darn good.
Yeah.
And some of them are still even working.
The cylinder, all jokes aside, the cylinder tube thing was actually pretty cool.
It was super cool to look at.
I think it pissed us all off that the government funded a technology that was semi-experimental, new, and extremely expensive. And it's like, why not just fund what we're already doing and help us out here?
Don't get me started.
Yeah, exactly. But the technology was pretty cool. Didn't you save one, or you have a couple? Where are those?
I just got the shirt, but I think the last time you checked, you
got
can
the
still
swag.
get them on eBay. You can get the shirts on eBay. You can
spontaneously
get
catch
the
on fire,
lightsabers
so
on
yeah.
eBay.
Yeah.
But the concept is kind of cool, reflecting off in a tube, glass.
No, it was cool.
It was the new. Everyone tries to come up with something new and innovative. There's all kinds of stuff at this conference, I'm sure, but some of it's a little wacky, and some of it's like, that's interesting.
Well, it's brainstorming, right?
Right.
So you brainstorm, but at the same time, a large Asian country, sat down and said, okay, we want to get involved in solar, and guess what they did? They did crystalline silicon. That was the tried and true technology that worked. And if the U.S. government had done anything near what they did in investment in the technology, we wouldn't be talking about it in the same way. The problem the U.S. has always had is that we always got to go after the next thing, and the next thing, when the real thing is staring us in the face and going, just use me and make me better. And so that's it. That's just part of the problem. But here we are.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, it looks like I got the tie it up signal from the guy on the skateboard. So should we?
We
could be
BS
rebellious
all day.
and keep going, or we could maybe let them try to invite us back next year.
Yeah, that's probably better.
Yeah, okay.
I'm surprised we're competing with the debate. We still got people here.
Yeah.
You guys lost?
We're way more excited than those people.
That guy's got a beer. That's got the right idea.
Yeah. So
thanks for having us, Sean.
yeah, thanks, Johan. And
this is fun.
And so for Bill, you could get a hold of him at brooksolar.com with one S in the middle. He couldn't afford the other S.
Yeah.
brooksolar.com.
Pay by the letter.
And Johan, you could just what is it, Johan.com or something like that?
I don't know. You could find me. I'm a mystery.
So it's like you Google things. You type in Johan
Solar. That'll get you there.
Type in Bill Brooks Solar.
Yeah, Johan Motorcycle, Solar.
Yeah.
Something like that.
You'll find me.
Bass player. He's a bass player, singer, all that kind of stuff. And thanks for listening to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. You can find out more at Solar Sean. That's SolarSean.com. Get educated, man.